Welcome to the Fermented Homestead. I'm Anna, and today I'm going to take you along while I make just very basic traditional sauerkraut. All that we're going to put in there, water apparently, but all we're going to put in there is cabbage, salt, and some garlic, and that's it. So first things first is just to peel the top layer. And this cabbage I got last weekend when I went over to visit my dad. So these are ones that he grew in his garden. Oh my gosh, I actually got it off in one piece. And these cabbages are massive. Let me go ahead and weigh it. 4 pounds, 6 ounces, just for scale. Almost got it. Okay, so these ones, we're going to go ahead and set these aside, and then we're going to chop this one up. Okay, so I like to chop these by hand because I like to have a much larger leaf on them. But you can just buzz these right through the food processor if you want to. I like to cut out the cores, and I do use them. I just chop them much more finely so they're not just big crunchy pieces inside the cabbage or in the sauerkraut. So all I'm going to do is just cut these about a centimeter wide. And if you find any big chunky pieces when you're cutting them up, I just kind of pull them and chop them a little further. But like I said, I like my sauerkraut to be nice and chunky. And that's the nice thing about making your own food is you can make it however you like it. And then I take the cores and I chop them up pretty well. Now we just have a big bowl of cabbage. I'm going to add 3 kind of heaping tablespoons. And then we're just going to mix it up. And when you're mixing it, you want to kind of squeeze it while you're mixing it. There's a couple different ways that you can do this, and I like to do it the easiest way, which is just to kind of mush it a little bit and get the salt in there and have it start to work on extracting the juices from the cabbage. And then I just set it aside for anywhere between a half an hour to a couple of hours. There's no real exact number. And then after that, I'll pack it into the jars. But you can also, if you're in a time crunch and you want to build some muscles, you can just sit there and you can beat on it for like 10 minutes and then be done with it. But I prefer to set it aside. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's definitely already started working. The salt has already started to pull the juices out. And once you get it mixed in really, really well, you want to get the salt on all the many surfaces as you possibly can. And once you do that, you kind of take just a little bit And if it tastes like this, the saltiness of a potato chip, you've hit the money on that one. And you can do more salt if you like things to be really salty. You can add more salt. And if you don't want to have quite as much salt in there, you can do a little bit less. There's a certain amount that you have to put in there if you want nice, kind of firmish, non-slimy ferments. It'll still be good. You can still consume it, but I wouldn't really want to. It'll just turn into kind of a sludge. The salt helps to preserve the pectins that are in it, and so it won't break down as much. It'll just ferment but not be mushy. So all we're gonna do with this is put it on the counter. I'm gonna cover it with a tea towel and just leave it there until, well, it's probably gonna be about 2 hours until I get back to it, maybe even 3. So we're just gonna set this aside, and before I actually leave the house, I'm gonna give it another mix, and then that's all there is to it. So we'll bring you back in a few hours when we're ready to take the next step. Now, we're just gonna mix this up even more. Okay, so now all we're gonna do is we have these mason jars, so now we're just gonna take it and put it in here, into the mason jar. Maybe. And then, if you have any kind of a wooden spoon or anything that you can just get in here to really just push it down really hard to try and release as much of the juices in the cabbage as you possibly can. And you want to make sure that you leave enough room in here to be able to put the cover on top of the cabbage cover that we're going to make. It's kind of a lid, and then also whatever weight you're going to use. You need to account for that because that's going to take up space. And if you fill it up too full, which I may have actually done, we'll find out. But if you fill it up too full, then it's going to overflow even more when you are leaving it to set for a week or so. So there's one down. And you really want to push down on this really hard to make sure that you're getting all of the spaces filled up and all of the air out of it. You want the liquid and the brine to get in there as much as you possibly can. Because we want to make sure that we are leaving this cabbage in an environment that is no oxygen. That's why we put everything underneath the brine. If oxygen gets exposed to it, then that's where the little nasty buggers can take over. So, I want to get all the air out. Alright, so we have both of our jars filled, and we have probably about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches of headspace remaining on those. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cut out a bunch of different lids for these. And what I like to do, sorry I didn't make that point, I take the size of the lid of the jar that I'm going to be using, and I just take the lid and I cut slightly wider than the lid. It's not an exact science. I just kind of make sure that I have at least one spine for each jar, and then the rest of them can just be whatever. take these guys and I'm going to go for the softest leaves first, just because these ones are going to be more pliable and I can tuck them in there a little bit better around the edges. So what you're going to do first is you're going to slowly put it in there and let it fill up with the brine so it doesn't shoot up in your face. And then you're just going to kind of tuck it in there and try and get around as much of the sauerkraut that's in there as you can. You just want to kind of tuck the leaf around. That's why you want to cut it larger than the lid. And you're kind of pushing it as you go too, also to get all of the air that might be underneath that leaf that you just put in there. Same thing on this side. Let it fill up with water first, and then just start tucking it around the edges as much as you can. You're never going to be able to get it perfect, but the more kind of in there and tucked around it you can get it, the less chance that you have of it going bad. There we go. So now it's time for the spine, and this one is, I like to use the spine on top just because it's nice and firm and it's just going to hold in there much better. So you just kind of tuck it and roll it on in there. Push on it to make sure you get all the air out. And I can definitely already tell this has too much brine in it, so I'm going to end up taking some out. So you just kind of tuck it under and push it down in there. There we go. And then I have my weights that I have already boiled. So we're just going to get these in the jar. Yay! It's not too full. Okay. Maybe a little. There we go. And you want to push down on it as much as you can. Toppers on here. Put the rings on. And then these, we're going to just cover these with a cloth. I'm going to leave them on the counter so that they're convenient, and I'll remember to check on them. And you want to check on them pretty regularly, at least once or twice a day, just to make sure that there's nothing formed on top. You know, check it to make sure that you don't have any floaters or anything in there, because those can mold really easily. So you're just going to check these every few days, and then probably at about 5 days or so, you're going to want to start to smell it or taste it. I usually do just go by the smell of it, and then I'll taste it once I actually dig into the jar. But if I smell it and I know it's not ready yet, then I'm not going to waste my time trying to unpackage all of that just to taste it. So just set these on the counter, and then probably you want to look inside, and you'll be able to see after a little while some carbon dioxide bubbles will start to form in here. And that is going to be what is going to push, from what I've read anyways, that's going to be what actually pushes the liquid out of the jar, is the carbon dioxide inside developing. So if you keep it weighted down enough, or you go in there and you push down on the weight to allow the carbon dioxide to come out of it, then you'll have much less overflow. At least that's the theory. And it works pretty well for me, not every time, but it works pretty well. So just going to set this on the counter, keep an eye on it, and start checking it in about 5 days, and I will bring you guys back and let you know how long you let this go for, and do a little bit of a taste test then. So we'll see you later. So we'll see you then. So it's the next day, and we have these have already started. You can see they're really charged up here. And if I squeeze it even just a little bit, whoop! Oh no, I got it on the microphone. So you can see, I mean, definitely need to make sure that you put some kind of a container underneath it to catch all of this overflow. And then you want to check it regularly to make sure and monitor the levels inside of the brine in there. So probably you're going to have to add some more to it tomorrow, maybe even sooner. Alright, so it's the morning of day 4, and I wanted to bring you guys back to show you what it kind of looks like mid-ferment. And I wanted to show you the little air pockets that I was talking about. Let's see if I can get that to zoom in on there. You can see these little pockets up here and over here, and they're just kind of all over. So what we're going to do at this stage is to try and get those little air pockets out. So all we're going to do, that's why we have this little weight in here, we're just going to push down on it. And you can see all that bubbling and stuff going on inside of there. You just push down on it with all of your reasonable might. If you're some kind of He-Man, you probably don't want to use all your strength, but I do. You can see how much the water level went down, and there's still a little bit of bubbles left in there, so let's see if we can try and get those out. You don't have to get everything, but the more you're able to get out, the better. It's been 10 days since we left our sauerkraut to ferment, and so now we are going to go ahead and check it. And you can see there's definitely all the activity has kind of left it. It's not bubbling up. It's not going crazy. So we know that a good part of the fermentation process has taken place. So now you can see on top, there's nothing weird on top. So now all we're going to do is get this weight out. I like to put it, well, I found recently that I like to put it on a clean plate in case it's not done fermenting. I can just put it right back in with no issues. So it definitely smells like sauerkraut. And all I'm going to do, since this is a test, all I'm going to do is just kind of get these little top pieces, push those things aside, just so I can get to some of the sauerkraut that is in there. Not quite. I'm going to put it in a little bit longer. So we are on day 16 of the sauerkraut fermentation. And we are going to give this a try, and I think it should definitely be done. You can get the pickle puck out. There we go. Okay. That is perfect. All right, so 16 days, and all we did was just cut up the cabbage, add some salt to it, leave it on the counter for a couple of hours, pack it into a jar, and leave it on the counter. And we have this delicious sauerkraut that is going to help us with our digestion and give us a bunch of good bacteria in there, and it's just delicious. I mean, you can have it raw, you can cook it, it'll kill the probiotics, but it still has the taste to it if that's all you're looking for. I definitely would recommend that you try it. Let me know what ferments you're working on in your own home, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you.